The Hidden History of Whiteness, How Christianity Sanctified Empire and Slavery. The Divine Mask of Power. For more than 400 years, the cross and the crown traveled together across oceans. Behind the sails of European ships were not only merchants and muskets, but priests, papal seals, and royal charters. Together, they carried something far more enduring than goods or gold, a new way of dividing humanity itself. It was called civilization, justified as Christian mission, and later rebranded as whiteness, the supposed mark of divine favor. This story is not just about slavery or empire. It is about the invention of a world order, a moral economy where faith, color, and profit were bound in one sacred knot. Welcome, my Blackness 100. Like, share, subscribe, comment, and turn on the notification button for more interesting videos. Number 1. The Royal Mandate and the Holy License. In the mid-1400s, Europe's Catholic monarchs were restless. Portugal and Spain, newly united under the Christian cross, wanted wealth and souls, in that order. But they needed spiritual permission to conquer, and the papacy obliged. In 1452, Pope Nicholas V issued the bull Dum Diversas, granting Portugal's King Alfonso V the right to invade, capture, and subdue any non-Christian peoples. 3 years later, Romanus Pontifex followed, giving the Portuguese monopoly over Africa's coasts and its infidel inhabitants. It was a sacred license for plunder, stamped with the papal seal. The church gained converts and tithes. The crown gained gold, ivory, and eventually, human bodies. This was the birth of sanctified exploitation. A partnership with the church gave spiritual legitimacy, and the monarchs delivered material tribute. When the Pope later divided the New World between Spain and Portugal through Inter Caetera in 1943, he was not merely drawing borders. He was drafting the first global charter of Christian empire. The papacy had become the moral architect of conquest, and kings its armed executors. Number 2. Souls and silver. As Portuguese and Spanish fleets reached Africa and the Americas, they found their greatest profit not in spices, but in flesh. Millions of Africans were captured, branded with crosses, and baptized before being sold, as though Christian conversion erased the sin of enslavement. Jesuits, Dominicans, and Franciscans established missions beside plantations. They preached salvation while using enslaved Africans to till their mission fields and build their churches. In Brazil, Jesuit sugar estates were worked by men and women in chains, all under the banner of Christ's mercy. In the Caribbean, Catholic cathedrals gleamed with donations from slave-owning planters who sought forgiveness through generosity. By the late 1500s, Christianity had become the moral language of empire. The church offered spiritual justification, the monarchs offered protection, and the merchants delivered wealth. This triad, faith, power, and profit, would soon define global modernity. Number 3. Protestant monarchs, same theology. When England broke from Rome under Henry VIII, many hoped the Reformation would sever the link between faith and exploitation. It did not. It simply replaced the Pope's authority with that of the king. Under the Church of England, the monarch became supreme governor, both political and spiritual head. By the 1600s, England had entered the slave trade with a holy swagger. Queen Elizabeth I granted charters to early slave expeditions, calling them ventures for the increase of trade and the glory of God. In 1672, King Charles II and his brother James, both devout Anglicans, founded the Royal African Company, a state-sponsored monopoly that shipped hundreds of thousands of Africans to the Americas. Shareholders included dukes, bishops, and royal chaplains. Each voyage carried the company's seal, a figure of an African bound in chains beneath a crown. The profits swelled royal treasuries, and from there flowed into church endowments, cathedral restorations, and missionary work. The cross and the crown, once again, moved in harmony, and beneath them, a new identity began to crystallize: white. Number 4. The birth of whiteness. In 1691, the colony of Virginia passed a law that used the term white for the first time in English legal history. The statute prohibited marriage between white persons and those deemed Negro or mulatto. It was not just about color, it was about hierarchy. Europeans of all classes were being taught that their shared whiteness placed them above Africans and indigenous peoples. This was the moral cement that kept the empire intact. The church preached that all souls were equal before God, yet its own hierarchy reflected the same color line. Missionaries baptized enslaved Africans but did not free them. Theologians debated whether black people had souls of the same kind as Europeans. And Christian kings, convinced of divine right, saw racial order as proof of heaven's design. Whiteness, once a mere description of skin tone, had evolved into a spiritual credential, evidence of Christian civilization and proximity to God. The darker races became the canvas on which Europe painted its own innocence. Number 5. The machinery of Holy Empire. By the early 1700s, the fusion of race, religion, and revenue was complete. The Society for the Propagation of the Gospel, SPG, an Anglican missionary organization, inherited the Codrington plantations in Barbados in 1010. Over 400 enslaved Africans labored there to fund Christian missions. A chapel was built on the estate, a house of prayer surrounded by fields of forced labor. Enslaved workers were branded on their chests with the letters SPG. Meanwhile, Queen Anne's Bounty, a church endowment established in 1704, invested heavily in companies tied to slave trading. Every sermon preached from its funded pulpits, every church roof repaired with its income, was touched by the profits of human bondage. In Spain and Portugal, the same pattern held. Colonial governors tithed their plantations. Missionaries baptized thousands, but defended the necessary discipline of forced labor. Across continents, Christian empire had become a moral machine for economic exploitation. Number 6. Theology of supremacy. How could such contradictions stand? A faith built on equality, endorsing enslavement. The answer lies in how Christian universalism was reinterpreted through whiteness. The logic ran like this. Europeans were chosen to bring light to the heathen. Enslavement was a means of Christianization. Submission was salvation. Thus, domination became a form of grace. This theology was preached from pulpits across Europe. Royal chaplains compared African servitude to Israel's bondage in Egypt, a divine test, not a crime. Missionaries taught obedience as the path to heaven. Slaveholders knelt beside enslaved people at communion, yet saw in their dark skin a divine hierarchy that excused ownership. It was a theology of racial order, sanctified by empire, and repeated for centuries. Number 7. The economic web of faith. By the mid-17th century, slavery was no longer a side business. It was the backbone of European wealth. Sugar, cotton, tobacco, and rum filled royal treasuries. Cathedrals were built from colonial profits. Universities trained clergy with slave-funded scholarships. And missionaries preached in colonies financed by the labor of those they evangelized.
Get on board now.
Consider Britain's case. The Royal African Company shipped over 200,000 Africans across the Atlantic. The Crown taxed every ton of sugar imported, every pound of tobacco smoked, and every barrel of rum distilled, each coin enriching both state and church. The Church of England, tied by law to the monarchy, benefited through endowments, royal tithes, and parish grants. Meanwhile, merchants bought absolution by donating to cathedral repairs or missionary societies, a tidy exchange of sin for salvation. In Spain and Portugal, similar systems thrived. Colonial governors tithed their plantations. Missionaries baptized thousands, but defended the necessary discipline of forced labor. Across continents, Christian empire had become a moral machine for economic exploitation. Number 8. Whiteness becomes doctrine. As the profits of slavery deepened, so did the intellectual defenses of hierarchy. European scholars like Carl Linnaeus and Johann Blumenbach categorized humanity by color. Homo europaeus albus, the white European, ranked at the top. This pseudoscience aligned perfectly with church teaching on civilization and divine order. Whiteness became not just social privilege, but proof of divine design. To be white was to be near God. To be black was to be nearer to sin and servitude. Churches across Europe echoed this worldview. Missionary reports described Africans as childlike souls needing European guidance. Sermons celebrated empire as the spread of light into darkness. Even abolitionists, when they finally arose, often framed freedom as an act of Christian charity, still centering white benevolence rather than African humanity. Number 9. The twilight of empire. By the early 1800s, the moral tide began to turn. Evangelical revivals, Enlightenment ideals, and slave uprisings exposed the rot beneath the empire's piety.
Britain abolished the slave trade in 1807 and slavery itself in 1833. Yet the reckoning was selective. When emancipation came, the British government paid £20 million in compensation, not to the enslaved, but to the owners, including clergy and church institutions. The wealth accumulated through centuries of sanctified slavery did not vanish. It was reinvested in estates, endowments, and universities that still stand today. The Church Commissioners, modern custodians of Church of England wealth, trace part of their funds to these slave trade investments. The Vatican, too, has begun confronting archives that reveal how papal orders received donations from colonial profits. Number 10. The spiritual economy of whiteness. When slavery ended on paper, the ideology it birthed, whiteness as divine order, remained. It justified segregation, colonial rule in Africa and Asia, and missionary paternalism well into the 20th century. Even today, the architecture of that belief lingers. Churches built with slave money, statues of monarchs and bishops who defended empire, economies still shaped by historical extraction. The Christian empire did not only conquer lands, it conquered the imagination, convincing generations that domination was salvation, that light had a color, and that God spoke with a European accent. Number 11. Modern reckoning. Today, the Church of England has publicly apologized for its ties to slavery and set aside £100 million for reparative projects. The Catholic Church faces calls for similar action, particularly for the papal bulls that sanctified conquest. Historians now expose how whiteness, as a political identity, was born not in science but in theology and royal policy, nurtured by pulpits and palaces alike. Understanding this history is not about guilt, it is about clarity. It reveals how ideas can become instruments, how religion can sanctify greed, and how morality can be reshaped by power. Number 12. Unmasking the Holy Empire. The story of whiteness is not just a story of color. It is a story of belief. Belief that God ordained hierarchy, that empire was redemption, and that prophet could wear a halo. From papal bulls to royal charters, from cathedrals funded by sugar to laws defining white as purity, the Christian empires of Europe built a world where faith and finance walked hand in hand. To understand that world is to see the roots of our own, because the legacy of the cross and the crown still shapes how nations remember, how churches repent, and how justice is imagined. Whiteness was not born from the skin. It was born from a system, a royal ecclesiastical partnership that turns salvation into commerce, color into caste, and empire into destiny. Until we face that sacred disguise, the echoes of that empire will keep whispering through our modern world. Like, share, comment, and hit that notification button for more interesting videos on My Blackness 100. Watch other interesting videos on the channel. Thank you.